As Bill said, I'm a floor director, stage manager. I've worked at Fox Newsroom for 12 years. And also Harpo, which is a home of the Oprah Winfrey Show. And she has her own network now, OWN, and that they produce shows for OWN now. So that's primarily what I worked on. But there's two things that I wanted to talk about. One was what a stage manager, floor director does. And I brought rundowns to show you that we can go over. And the second one was actually the hard part, which is how to get the job in the first place. At that time, and I think it still is, one of the most important ways to land a job is to do an internship. You get your foot in the door, you can make a good impression, and I think everyone knows, basically, you show up on time, you look professional, you work hard, and you're easy to get along with, very cooperative. So at that time, it was actually in the late 80s, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have texting and Facebook. If you wanted a job or an internship, you had to call the place, you had to go to your school counselor. You couldn't just go to a computer. So we basically had channel 2, 5, 7, and 9. Those were the main stations at that time. And channel 7 was the #1 station. So that's where I wanted to go. So I filled out the papers, I did my internship at ABC, and most of my friends were, they got jobs in the newsroom. They were at the assignment desk, they were doing different things. And for some reason, I was put on a show called Where Were You? And what Where Were You was, it was a show out of New York. Every year they would, every week they would pick a year and they would tell what happened in the world. Say it was 1950. In Chicago, they would leave us a 7-minute segment, and we would produce a 7-minute segment in Chicago and show it. So anyway, the woman I worked for, her name was Ya, and basically what we did, she was a one-woman show. That was her job as the producer, to put together the 7-minute piece every week. And as I said, there was no internet, no computers at this point. So what I did, I would work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday, I would go to the library, and I would look up everything that happened in that year. The songs, the music, the hit movies. Then I'd give her the information, she would pick the stories. Wednesday, I would come back, and now I actually had to go out and try to find, ABC, they had a library, videos, pictures, the music. She would put it together on Thursday, and Friday we would shoot the show. And you're probably all too young, but there was an anchorman named Fahey Flynn. He would anchor the show, and we would actually go to different locations. If Chicago Theater opened in 1950, we would stand in front of the Chicago Theater, and I actually made cue cards for him. Well, what happened was, Ya was about 40, and she was having her first baby. And as the semester progressed, she became ill on and off, and she took a lot of time off. So basically, here I was, an intern, 21 years old, at ABC, basically doing this whole segment myself. She would always come, though, on Friday when we would shoot it. So I finished the semester. She wrote a great review. She told the person in charge of hiring, and they told me that they were going to put me on a list. As soon as there was an opening, they would be calling me. So a month went by, I didn't hear, I'd call. Well, it turns out the person in charge of HR quit and went to a whole different company. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I called Ya. They said she was on a maternity leave, and they didn't think she was going to come back. So here I did this great internship. I learned so much, had all this experience, and it was kind of like a door was closed. And I'm just going to give you one other quick example because it all ties in. But I went to school for television film. So I started sending my resume, calling all the TV stations. I wasn't getting anywhere. I started sending my resume to different film companies that would come in town. I'd call the Chicago Film Office. Still nothing. I did this for a year. So finally I decided there had to be a way to get in there, right? So I went to the extras office. and I found out how to be an extra in a movie. It was kind of exciting because, you know, the crew was there. I'd see celebrities. After a while, it got a little boring, and I wasn't going to do it anymore. And the lady said, well, they like you so well, would you be a stand-in? So I'm like, well, what's a stand-in? And what they do is if you're the same size and coloring as an actor, you watch them rehearse, they dress you in the same clothes, and then I would walk through it for the crew. It would take about an hour. They'd set the lights and practice all the camera shots on me. And when they got it just right, I would come out and the actor would come back and do the scene. Well, this was great because now I wasn't locked in a room as an extra. I was with the crew and the actor and the director all day long. And I did it for about 7 years, and I actually got to stand in for a lot of big stars and meet a lot of really big directors. And one day I knew I was in trouble because I don't know if you're too young, but you know Oliver Stone? Yeah. Well, he did a movie back then called Natural Born Killer. Yeah. And I stood in for Robert Downey Jr., who you probably know from Iron Man. Yeah. And so we were actually for 2 weeks in Stateville Prison. And they would give us 3 different IDs that we had to wear. And nobody could leave at the end of the night until they counted all the prisoners, because they would think they'd try to kill us or something and take our IDs, and you couldn't go anywhere without a guard. But anyway, it was in the middle of the summer, and I'll never forget, we were shooting a scene in a prison cell. They have all these lights on us. It's about 90 degrees, but it was the cameraman, Oliver Stone, Robert Downey Jr., and myself. And they're blowing white smoke in, and you couldn't breathe. And I just was so happy, you know. I thought I could stay in here all day, you know. So anyway, I did that to learn about film because I love film and television. And after doing it for so many years, I got to know the crew and I got to know people. So I tell them I wanted to become a production assistant and learn more about directing. So they're like, well, fill out the resume, fill out this, fill out that. And once again, as all this started, we would get maybe 10, 15 movies a year in Chicago at that time. Canada offered them a great deal with all these tax breaks and tax incentives. So just as I was getting my foot in the door once again, all the movies started going to Canada, and we'd get like 2 a year. But the point of the story is, when I was in school, I read a book, and it said if you, just say you won $5,000 and it was at a mall 5 miles from your house, and you had till 9 o'clock at night to pick it up. If you're going down the main road to the mall and the street is closed, what would you do? Would you go back home and forget? You would. Okay, you do what? Right. So all right, so now you go back home, you go around the back way, that way doesn't lead. And just as you said, you go back home, the point is you have to get a goal, stick with the goal no matter what, and just keep finding different paths until you finally find one that gets you where you want to go. So, in other words, I did my internship at ABC. I couldn't get my foot in the door, but I had to find another way to get in. I wanted to learn about directing. I was an extra. I was a stand-in. Then it ended. But you can't give up. You have to keep going until you find a way to get in. And that's the hard part, is the getting in. But every person you meet, every experience you can find, it all hopefully will lead so you don't lose track of the goal that you want. I was able to get a job, but only as a production assistant. Now, I don't know if you know in a newsroom, but the morning show is 5 hours of live news. I would have to be there at 4 in the morning till 10. So I'd get up at 2 every morning. And it was 5 hours of live news. What I would do is the scripts would all come out of the computers. We had to organize them, mark it down, which ones we had and were missing, and we had to bring them into the anchor people and to the director and the assistant director. And even though they had computers, it was not as relevant as it is today. They depended on the actual paper script. They had it in the teleprompter, but if the teleprompter ever went down, they needed the papers. So anyway, I worked from 4 to 9 Monday through Friday, and then went to my regular job. But while I was there, I looked around and saw what job I wanted to do. That's another thing. You have to be specific, know what you want to do. And the floor director, they're actually in the studio with the anchor people. And even though it's very exciting, it's live TV, it's also fun, I thought. And I thought that's the job I want to do. I said I was going to be a production assistant for a year. I did it for 4 years. Finally, he came to me and he said, you know, we're looking for a freelance floor director and we want to give you a chance. So after all these years of experience, finally, you know, it was going to happen. So I was all excited. I thought, oh, maybe I'll get a quarter raise or 50-cent raise, whatever. The woman who originally hired came up to me and said, you know what an honor it is to be in the Directors Guild. And I said, oh yeah. I said, who's in the Directors Guild? And she said, you are. I didn't even know it was in the, and the Directors Guild I didn't realize is so hard to get into. You can't just get into it. There's all different qualifications, or you had to work in the news field for 3 years. It's been 12 years total I've been doing it. I'm going to pass out the rundown, but I'm going to explain exactly what I do. And from there, I just want to tell you briefly, because this was exciting to me. Harpo Studios called me. And I was so excited because I was going to go and do a show with Oprah. And she's interviewing Dr. Phil. And, well, let me pass this out, and then I'll tell you, because I'll be standing here all night telling you. So this is the rundown. What, are you guys familiar with this at all?
Is it time sheet?
Well, it's kind of, it does a lot of things. What this does, like if you see across the top, it says 7 to 8:30. This is the actual rundown for the show yesterday from 7 to 8:30. And if the directors go by this, this is really important to me, the floor director. Each story in the news has a separate number. So if you see A1 is a cold open, which SOT means it's sound on tape. You know, when they show the CBS News and you see the pictures and whatever. Each story the anchors read, or each different story, has its own number. And if you look across to above, it says camera. The first thing you see is 2 on a 2 shot. So just let's say there's 3 cameras. Say I'm the middle camera. 2 on a 2 shot means it's camera 2, and a 2 shot is there's 2 people. So that means the middle camera is going to be on the two anchor people. And then to the far right column is roughly how long each piece should last. Does that make sense so far? Yeah. Okay. So now what I go by is the camera column, because what I have to do is I have to cue the anchor people. So we see 2 on a 2 shot, so I'm basically standing next to camera 2. I'm telling them 10 seconds to the show, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And if they're going to be on camera, I point to the camera and I hold a white paper like this and I wave it. And the light comes on and they start. Now, if you look further down under the 2 shot, it'll say VO, wipe VO. Do you guys know what that means?
Voiceover?
Right, it's a voiceover, which means they're either showing a picture, a graphic, or a video, and the anchor people aren't on TV, but they're speaking over the picture. So right after the number, like right next to A4, you see the initials, it says NB, Slick Roads. That's Natalie. That means Natalie's going to be reading the story. She's not on camera. It's got voiceover, and they're going to be showing a computer graphic. Does that make sense? Am I losing anybody?
No.
Okay. You don't see what?
804.
Okay, so each story has their own number. So now I start, I cue them. They both speak on camera 2. Hello, welcome to the news. So now they're going to go to a video. And Natalie is going to, A4 we're at, Natalie's going to read Slick Roads. There's no camera shot there, it's a voiceover, and then that story should take her 10 seconds to read. Okay? So now the next story, underneath her, it says JK. Do you see that under A5? That's John Kelly. He's going to read the story on sex assault. He's also not on camera. If you go to the camera column, you see it's blank. And his story should also take 10 seconds.
What does CG stand for?
computer graphic. Okay? So now as the floor director, I'm cueing them to the camera. I'm also cueing them when to speak. So if John's going to read the story, but he's not on camera, I point to him. Okay, so it's time for his story. She's done. I point to him. He talks. If he's going to be on camera, I stand there and I wave my arm. So they know if I point at them, they're just going to talk over a video or a picture. If I point to the camera, they're going to be on camera. The weatherman might want to talk for 5 minutes and he gets 3 minutes. So for the traffic, it says don't float or don't kill, because that's something important they want to get on air. There might be an accident on the freeway and your travel time is 22 minutes. They don't want to cut that out because people might be listening, you know, and they want to know which road to take to work. So a lot of the fluff things they can take out, but the important things they want to keep. And then one other thing I wanted to show you, if you go to 820, that's once again camera 2 on a 2-shot. And then it says Anita Live, and to the right of 821, it says double box remote. Now, does anybody have any idea what that may be?
Is that like two when you're like watching like two people at the same time?
Yes.
One of them's off-site,
Right.
one of them's in the studio.
So we're going to start out on the anchor people. They're going to toss to Anita. So she might be, let's say she's, you know, in front of a museum. Now they're going to go to a double box. So one side's going to have the anchor people, the other side's going to have Anita. Okay? And remote means she's not in the studio, she's out somewhere, or if you see right underneath that. And the other thing that is sometimes difficult, especially at the 9 o'clock show, they have a beautiful set, a lot of different colors. They like a lot of movement. They're trying to make it exciting, fun. They want it to look, you know, eye-catching. So, before I have one other thing before I finish that. If you see here, this goes by blocks. The first block is the A block. And then if you see, let's see here. On the third page, they put a gray line for the first commercial. You see that on the third page on the top? That commercial is 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That's all the way to the far right. So I'm standing there with my stopwatch, 1 minute left in the commercial, 30, 15, 10, 9, 8, talk. You know, I point. I stop at number 2. Does anybody know why I don't say number 1? Because why?
So they don't hear you?
Yeah, sometimes I cut it too close. Not just me, I mean any floor director. You cut it too close and you might hear on the air 1. You know what I mean? So you say 5, 4, 3, 2, and they know to talk. Okay? And so there's the first commercial break. So now the second block, you see it's all B, letter B. So each block has a separate letter. Oh, this is what I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you one thing I wanted to tell you. The 9 o'clock news, when I was saying about it's colorful, they want movement, they want it to be exciting. The A block, which is the first block, if you ever watch the 9 o'clock news, you're going to see there's people everywhere. The anchors are there. They have a reporter in front of the plasma. They have a big board, they call it. They have somebody in the big board. They the weatherman. They have this reporter. There's 10 people. God bless you. And in this 5 or 6 minutes, like spitting, in this 5 or 6 minutes, you know, they're on the anchors and they go to her. Now I have to get the anchor man over to the big board in 30 seconds. So I'm like, you know, Jeff, over to the big board. So then they go to the weather guy for 10 seconds. Then it's on him. Now it's on you, and he has to get back because you're going to read a story for 10 seconds, and then they're going to show the both of you again on camera 2. So the first block of the 9 o'clock is like you're ready for a nervous breakdown, you know, because there's just people everywhere and it's moving so quick, you know. But anyway, in answer to your question, the news is a lot more fast-paced. Talk show is a lot easier.